annoying. So I heard, I'm trying to think of the last thing I heard. I think it was kind of
Oh,
after you said you're talking about high school and like how you got into high school and how you got into being like into health and being a PE teacher and like that stuff. So I don't know if you remember where you left off.
no, yeah. Basically, I just merged two things together, with strength conditioning stuff and PE. And once I did and started actually teaching physical education, it just felt right. Everything felt like the way it was supposed to be, and that's what I was supposed to be doing.
Mhm.
Um, and that's kind of how it started.
Okay. Um, I guess now moving more, Bria. Now moving more into like the school, not specifically like your why you became a teacher, but um what are some things that you have noticed? It doesn't even have to be just like in our school system, but um in terms of race that have um like either held students back or um made other students treat others differently, I guess. Is there anything that you've like personally um seen
Well,
or
you know, the whole the whole reason I came to Scioto, the whole reason I love Scioto so much is because of the diversity.
mm,
Like, you have a ton of different nationalities, races, and I feel like it's a lot more. There's a lot more of a family atmosphere, with what we do and how we and we involve other people. We're raising, the fact that we're raising awareness right now for, the Black Lives Matter, the fact that we're raising awareness for the LGBTQ community, uh, the fact that we have all these, we make a point to celebrate, you know, uh, Hispanic Heritage Month. We make a point to, in Jewish faith. So I feel like we do obviously not the best job we can, because we can always do better, but we do uh, a pretty decent job right now of trying to make sure that we're addressing things, or we're talking about things, and it's open to talk about. Um, you know, is there stuff that we miss? Absolutely. Nobody's perfect. I feel like we could probably do a little bit more with the women's rights, when it comes to that aspect, like making sure we're talking about that as well. I think that's something that gets kind of looked over, as far as when it comes to race and ethnicity type discussions. Um, but as far as I feel like, as a white male teacher, um, these are the things that I'm learning now, that it's hard to have these conversations.
Mhm.
You're there still, right?
Yeah.
Okay, good. It's hard to have these conversations, about race, and it's hard to have these conversations about, the love is love and type things. But it's what we have to do. It's the conversations are hard, but I feel, especially Saturday, I feel we do a really, uh, we're doing a better job of addressing these things. We're doing a better job. We're actually trying to have conversations about race with our teachers of color in the school that we have. And I know there's not many. And I think, hopefully, that's going to change in the future. It's one of the big pushes that we are making, for our school board, is to hire as diverse as possible. Um, in all kinds of positions, not just teacher, but, um, So it's one of those things. Is it perfect? Absolutely not. Will it ever be perfect? Probably not. Uh, but I think we're taking the right steps, especially at Scioto. I feel like we're taking the right steps. Um, Coming from, so when I taught in South Carolina, it was a 70-30 black to white school. It was 90% free or reduced lunch high school. So, from coming from a small town in Kentucky where we had one black person or black kid in the school to, um, playing college and then being in the football team where it was predominantly black, being in a predominantly black school, it started to obviously open my eyes to a lot of different things that I was very naive about, just didn't have any experience with. Mm-hmm. So that background has kind of helped me a ton when it comes to how we're treating students and how we're, addressing things and talking things and making sure we're including things and keeping, the biggest kind of thing that came to mind that was the biggest shocker was teaching to the majority or teaching to the average. Basically, if we teach the average, then we're only going to be hitting, it's basically a systemic part of racism, is that we're only going to be hitting those average students rather than what are, trying to get to the lower students or higher students. It's just kind of teaching to the middle. Well, we can't do that anymore. And having a point on that is and it's a little bit easier for my subject, PE and health. I mean, it's not, we don't get into super intense, but like for health discussions and making it a point to talk about, the differences, the racial differences of different things, and why that is, where did it come from, and having those references to a lesson is always good. That we're changing, and that's been a point of emphasis this past, especially this year, but this past couple of years, about what we're doing. So.
Mm-hmm. So why, in your opinion, why do you think it's taken this long to kind of get on that train of like, we have to adjust the way we're teaching, not even just teaching, but like just in the school system in general. But why do you think it's taken this long for that to happen? Or do you think it has been happening over like many years?
Everywhere. I can't. I mean, it's been happening. And that's the thing though. I guess that's the best part. Not there's a good part, but the simple fact that I'm learning more, the simple fact that I'm trying to understand what I need to do and what is the route I can take to do something. Reading the material and getting those things. But as far as where it started, and I have no clue it's prevalent. You can see it all the time. I mean, now that you're learning more, right? The more that we're learning and seeing what has happened, it's much easier to spot those things now than it would have been for me 5, 6, 7 years ago, right? Now that I know that this way we're doing things is basically rooted in systemic racism and holding different types of people back, like it's much easier to spot what needs to change rather than where it started. Because obviously it's a scary, I think it scares a lot of people though. The older generations, it scares because it's going to be different, and there's a lot of people in the older generations that are embracing it, but I guess that's the necessary part of change. It's got to be uncomfortable to make it better, right? So having those discussions, learning as much as I can. If you're ever interested in reading, I just finished Sean King, Make a Change. It's an excellent book, kind of gives you an idea of how to start, basically talking and having, and it begins with like the election process. It begins with voting, and it begins with getting organized, and no matter what you're doing, but be active. Um, and it, always finding time to be active in something rather than just like for me, just sitting back and having talking about it. Well, until you actually go out and do something, you know, it's hard. It's hard to say that I, am changing.
Yeah. I think it's really interesting because I think, and not even just teachers, but like I think everyone's kind of self-reflecting, like you said you've been doing too. And like I can see it in myself as well, and like how I've changed and how I wouldn't have seen things before, all of that. So I think that's really interesting. But I think there's like two separate parts of it. There's like a self-reflection, and then there's like what you said, the action,
Yeah.
which obviously takes time to change. But so you talked a little bit about in the school system about how you guys are like implementing those changes, but like is there anything else specifically that you would want to mention that besides like I think you had mentioned something about hiring individuals of a larger diversity, um,
Yeah.
and
That's
more than just
the,
teaching, but
yeah. So, I mean, those are again, it's hard not to be a cynic, or it's hard not to be not negative, but when the we have people in charge, we have people that are in a position of power that are trying to do really good things, that are trying to implement really good things, or trying to set up where they're hiring, they're making it a point of emphasis to hire people of color or more diverse staff, not just staff, but any you know any position, especially in the position of power, right, and holding those. But when it's hard, like those people only have so much power, right, and they're trying to make these changes that are really well planned out and really thought out and would be a huge deal for our district or for our school system. But when the people that are also in there with that hold a lot more power are not open to those different things, then it makes it really difficult to get things done like that. I'm not pointing fingers or blaming or anything or saying this is wrong. I'm just saying that's just how it is. That you know, um, until until we can get the positions of power, uh, you know, get it to someone who is culturally different, uh, it's going to be a lot easier to.
sorry.
No, you're good. I thought you were coughing.
Come here. Hi.
So
She's
it's going to
barking.
be a lot easier once those positions are hired. I mean, once those people are going to be different from the people that are there, um, it's going to be a lot better. Um, when that happens, I have no clue. But I feel like we're doing. At least I know there are people out there doing the best they can with what they're given. So that's really the hard part.
Yeah, I think I don't know. I can't even imagine how like difficult it is to try to make those changes when there's people. I mean, we see it every day, but like
Yeah.
especially in like a school system when you're trying to make changes for the better for students, and there's teachers, or not even just teachers, but people who just are very reluctant to that. So it goes back to that thing of like, how do you deal with that? Like, I don't know, you know?
Yeah. And that's I don't have, it's hard because I've always been, I guess, the thought of if you can't, if you don't have an alternate way of doing it, then don't. Why are you saying things, right? Like, why do you want it? So I don't really have an answer again, like I said, we have some really good people above us that are trying to do some really good things and take the really good steps. And I know in our school building, it's phenomenal. I mean, again, talk from my point of view, from a white male point of view, I don't know how much, I can say it's changed or it's gotten better, but I feel like the process, the self-reflection that we've all went through over this summer and now actually being in somewhat school, uh, there's a lot more self things, talk and change that we've done that hopefully those students in those categories are seeing a more positive change. Um, have I done anything negative? I don't think so, but that doesn't mean I was right. Right? I could have just been standing back and not saying anything. So that's the process that I feel like we've done a really good job this summer, is to address those things and to get those things, to have those uncomfortable conversations in order to have those changes. The students see those changes in
Yeah. I watched a another interview with just a bunch of teachers from all over the world, and they were talking about this issue too. And one of them had said or mentioned something about how the curriculum that is now being taught, trying to figure out how to word it. It's like um, it's based majorly on um, I don't want to say white history because that's not exactly right,
well,
but
yeah, written by people in
yeah,
power at the time or
yeah.
holding, yeah, it's usually the white, yeah, for sure.
So they talked about kind of how that makes students feel when they're reading, um, whether it's history or whatever class, um, about people who are of not of their color or of their race, and how that like makes them feel, how that impacts their relationships with other students, um, stuff like that. So I thought that that's kind of something that
Yeah,
was
for sure.
too. But
Yeah. Well, that Mr. Schaefer, if you ever, he's doing, the whole social studies department. That was again, like you just said, realizing like what stuff they're teaching and how it impacts, actually have an impact of our black students or our Muslim students, whoever, how's it actually impacting them when they talk, rather than just giving the general statement of stuff, but actually looking at the point of views from your black historians, from different races that actually are factual or based in real happenings, but are the way it should be, the way it should be talked about, not just this is an alternate opinion, but like this is how it should be addressed now. Like this has got to be the new culture that we talk about, like we address in that. Uh, but yeah, I think those aspects have changed a whole lot of the way people are teaching things, especially from your history standpoint. Um, and that is going to be something that's got to change every year, right? That's got to be something that's got to be addressed all the time. Um, where did this come from and who does it impact? I'm not a history teacher, but this amount of things that I've learned over this past summer about specifically that stuff, about racial injustice and social injustice, it just blows my mind. Blows my mind how how naive I was, and two, just how privileged I am. I guess now I didn't have to deal with the things that a lot of our students are having to deal with on a daily basis. Um, So that it is, again, just uncomfortable conversations that we have to have.
Yeah. I was kind of thinking about this when you were speaking, but um, I never really stopped to think about it from like a sports perspective. Um, I don't know if you want to talk a little bit on that. I don't know. I don't know much about that. So is there anything that you see at all in terms of race or
Yeah, we see it. It's, again, self-reflection is, how do we, as a coach, you and a teacher, you want to address, you want to treat every student differently. You want to treat them all, you can't treat everybody the same, right? Um, you can hold everybody to the same standard, but you can't treat them the same. So like your daily interactions, my daily interactions are going to be different from the guys on the football team than with a student that comes in the health class, right? That's just a given. Now, is it because there are more black kids on the team or more kids of color on the team? I'd like to say no. I'd like to say that's not a reason why I interact with them more, but I don't. Being around it all the time and being around those guys all the time, being around uh, and knowing that this is a daily interaction, I feel like our coaching staff, Coach Johnson has done an unbelievable job of making sure we point out that we are telling those kids, hey, if you want to go down to protest this summer, if you want to go down and protest, then go down and protest. We're all for it. We want it. We're there. We're taking our families there. But we want them to do it in a way that's safe. We want them to be safe about it, right? We just want to let them know the biggest impact is that we're there and that we can talk about this stuff. Are there always going to be issues? Absolutely. There's always going to be issues. Recently, team, there's always going to be those guys on opposite. There's always going to be those types of people, you're playing against, whether it be life or football, right? They're just not going to believe what you believe and are going to say and do things based on your race or color. So no matter what we do to fix it, right, there's always going to be people outside the bubble that have that type of opinion. Is it right or wrong? I mean, again, we feel it's wrong, obviously. But we can't, as a coach, if a player comes off the field, hey, he called me the N-word. Those are the conversations, like, how do I address it as a white coach? Those are things we have to need to talk about. And that's Coach Johnson's done a really good job in, one, opening things up for us to talk about things. Two, making sure, trying to hire and get back as many of the kids that have graduated from the program back to coaching, back to our high school, and hiring, making sure we have trying our best to have a culturally different coach or black coach on the team. Not because you just want a black coach. We need one. We need to help, to help us be better, right, about it. It's not, I feel like that's, 10 years ago, I would have never said we were trying to that's something you don't really talk about, but now it's got to be talked about, right? It's got to be, we need someone like that on the team. It only helps us. It only helps us, one, just to have conversations about that. And two, he's from this area, and to help the community, those kids that he's interacting with every day. But to show our support and, just make sure that, hey, we're trying to change. We're trying to do things to help us change. So that's, as far as sports wise, that's always going to be a conversation. And our professional athletes have done, I feel like, a phenomenal job of setting the standard, setting the stage for, hey, they're not going to sit back and they're not going to just not do anything. They're not going to sweep it under. It's actually going to be addressed. They've done a really good job of teaching, especially our high school kids, hey, this is an actual, you should start talking. You should start standing up for this stuff. You should start, setting the tone for change, right? But again, I'm here. I'm totally in support of what our guys want to do. You know, if they want to kneel for the national anthem, I'm going to kneel right next to them. Because one, it's what I believe, and two, it's just showing again support. You know, I'm having conversations with my two sons who are both white males. Hey, this stuff that's going on, it's not right. We have to have these conversations that we're talking about. Like, they got to know, like, just that what's going on has to change. And it's one of those things. It's going to be an ongoing. It's never going to be. I mean, it's not going to be fixed right away. It's going to take a long time. Hopefully, by the time my boys are in high school and college, it's changed a lot. It just depends, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Well, I appreciate it.
Yeah, for sure.
It's really helpful. I had no idea a lot of the stuff that Scioto was specifically doing, so it was really helpful. But I've taken a lot of your time up.
No, you're fine. This has been a pretty intense conversation for
Yeah.
before 2 in the afternoon, 1 in the afternoon.
Yes. Well, all right. Well, I'll see you later. Thank you so much.
Hey, you're not. So this video is recorded. Like, you're gonna take out my screen name when you show this to people, right? Like,
Yes.
try to edit that out. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Good deal.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Sarah. See you.
See ya.